Yeah, but I was at the so it's, I know it's 225 plus. My brother says right now it's used to I'll ask Brian and he knows. Oh, I don't know if it's like that.
And I can't reach it.
Well, I know.
I just stand on the tip.
I don't know if that's right.
I even like pre-warned them by sitting there. You're smart though. I totally am not. I know I didn't eat after this.
Oh, you know what happened? A little more the other. Perfect. Thank you.
I do. I'm eating on the control of my Have you made it out from under? Just finished here now.
Yeah, it was
Oh, yeah, she was slowly dropped to make us the dress, and she didn't. And now it's like, until we started playing down the side, all
No, you were good. You were totally okay.
meetings.
Yes.
I feel like I was there working on this.
Thank you.
We didn't really find your because they said that we would try a couple projects. But that was it. Like it was soft. Like we decided that we were doing one grade steps. I think we talked about and the takeaways and like basically in there. That guy.
Yeah, how do you say your plural?
That guy.
You called me so many times today, so yeah, so my voice was so freaking, and when you call out, her phone is at least so it's like, income doc.
I've never seen
Well, there's two seats here. One is split.
I know.
Who's over there tomorrow?
Someone else, like, you know what? Well, I can see people like on their phones. Oh, that's wonderful.
So there was.
Last week, you could see my
Well, it's just, yeah. They're like, no, mental state. I don't know if there's a way to keep
So I found a taker for all this.
Oh, yeah. I think
She
they're
has
all.
it in my house. And then we get there, and my brother You were the first.
Yes. Oh, okay. So, but he only has to then. And so.
It looks like a ship window, right?
Oh, I don't like how it's. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna just give you that.
Good evening, everyone. Pardon the tardiness. We have a board president that is trying to find cell phone service while on personal leave. And so he's now to a truck stop. I think it's going to work. And so we've also just left an executive session. Kelly, thank you for the new batteries and the microphone as well. So it's time to take a summer break, quite frankly. So give us just 2 more minutes and then we will call Mr. Russell Holtz in on the phone.
Yeah, so see my hand, well, no, you might have to. So you can see my hand. Take it. So. And don't like me.
Kids are done. Yep, kids are done. They've been out for a week. No, a week tomorrow. They're all done. Yep. Yes. Now like, okay, we're gonna start greasing the wheels and get ready for next year.
I'm like, oh, I can't.
Or, no, not start getting ready. You've been getting ready for next year. Yeah, put it close.
And so I went and
All good stuff now.
All right, Mr. President, I think we are ready to try to do this remote thing. You can see us on YouTube as well as all the other online visitors. If you wouldn't mind calling the meeting to order, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Neal. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we will start with a roll call vote. Roll call attendance.
Austin.
Aye.
Ellingworth.
Here.
Patterson. Here. Russell.
Here. Okay, this evening, Dr. Neal, do we have any special guests doing the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence?
We don't see our Boy Scouts here this evening. I'll be glad to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, sir.
Okay, thank you. Could you take over for that, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, if the members of the public could please observe a moment of silence, I would appreciate that very much. Thank you, Mr. President. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Neal. And thank you for everyone who's attending this evening. May I have a motion for the approval on the agenda, please?
So moved.
May I have a second? Roll call.
Austin.
Aye.
Ellingworth.
Aye.
Patterson. Aye. Russell.
Aye. All right, we will move directly into public comments. I want everyone to know that they should please be aware that any personal or individual student matters are considered confidential under Colorado law. And it is out of respect for the law and our employees and students that we require those discussions to take place privately in an executive session. It is requested that individual comments be limited to 5 minutes or a total of 20 minutes for a particular topic. The intent of public comment is to give the Board of Education the opportunity to hear your comments. However, the board will make no decisions nor take any action on public comment during the meeting. Thank you. Dr. Neal.
Mr. President, we have 11 members to give public comment this evening. And so we'll go just the old paper style. For somebody that didn't see, Miss Lindsay Paul is out this evening. She's normally our digital guru that's helping us pull things together. So back to paper. Thank you for signing up. Mr. Nate Owen is first. And Mr. Nate, you would approach the podium. And then after Nate will be Ashley Norton. After Ashley Norton will be Jamison Dion. And then after Jamison Dion will be Bill Brown. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Russell, Dr. Neal, Mr. Russell, and Board of Directors. My name is Nate Owen, and I'm here as the representative of WPEA and the teachers of Woodland Park School District. So I would like to share with you guys some of the updates from the end of the school year. And so here I am to give you guys a little bit of a WPEA report. And so we felt, after talking to Dr. Neal, that this was the most appropriate place in the agenda for just giving you a little bit of information about how the end of the school year went. So first off, I would like to thank the Board of Directors for their representation at the meet and confer process with the teachers. We had a very positive work through session through a couple different time frames. A couple of things that we worked through was language in the conditions of employment for the employees, for both classified and certified staff. We worked together and collaboratively worked diligently with our central office staff, the Board of Education, and several teachers that were at the large circle. And we worked hard at working for a raise for all employees in the school district. I do want to commend you guys and commend the executive office staff and the teachers that worked so diligently and collaboratively together for that. So thank you for that. A couple of things that I'd like to report. I know that as a teacher of 11 years, I do know that there is no tired like the end of the school year tired. That is just one of those things that every teacher knows, that the end of the school year is teacher tired. And it is just exhausting. I know that my teachers or my staff, not my staff, but my colleagues, my staff that I work with, had a very strong end of the school year, especially the last 3 weeks when we pushed through. We worked diligently. The students showed a lot of perseverance. They showed a lot of resilience, and they showed a lot of academic tenacity, where they really worked hard to try to finish out the school year strong. I know that even as the school year comes to a close, teachers don't always have the end of a break here. I know that the common notion is that teachers get the summer off, but in all reality, we don't. We still have a job to do. We still work tirelessly through the summer. It is a different kind of work because we're no longer directly working with students, but we're definitely preparing for students. Even this week, we've been working on some curriculum review days where we have reflected on the lessons that went well and worked on how to improve the lessons that did not go as planned. We make sure that the standards that we are teaching in our classrooms are aligned with the Colorado Department of Education using actual data that we collect in our classrooms. We want to make sure that we are aligned with what best practices are. A lot of teachers, like myself included, exhibit a growth mindset. Throughout the summer, we all tend to work on making these lessons better, but also do a little bit of reading and work on our own. In fact, this morning I was reading a book by Smith, Steele, and Sharon, which is actually one of the most renowned math teacher preparation books, and I was just reading the foreword on it. And there was a quote in there by Dan Meyer. For those of you that are not math teachers, if you don't know Dan Meyer, he is one of the most renowned math educators out there. He is one of the leaders of Desmos, which is an online platform from that is used most commonly as a drafting calculator, but it also has a lot of other capabilities. But he has a lot of things. One of the quotes that I was really struck by this morning when I jotted down these notes, and he said, "We work with math students, composites of mathematical ideas and the students' identities as people. The practices for orchestrating mathematical discussion in the classroom and putting these practices into action develop and sustain their belief that both math and students matter. This book will help you learn to walk along that path." And so it's one of those teachers understand that it's content that matters, but it's also the students. And so as a teacher myself, and I know many of my colleague teachers do some professional development over the summer, we stand by these words that we are not only preparing ourselves to be better content deliverers, but better deliverers to our students, because it is the students that do matter. And so with that being said, I just wanted to share some of the thoughts from WPA and the teachers as we head into the summer. So thank you for allowing me to have some time to share with you guys.
And I couldn't quite tell if as a teacher he had flip-flops on or not, but he's definitely wearing shorts. I'm a little bit envious this evening. Mr. Russell, do you have something to say? You just came off mute.
I just wanted to thank Nate for working together and working, for working with the board, and thank you for that presentation, status of the Teachers Association.
Thank you, sir. We have Ashley Norton. Please approach the microphone. Jameson Dion following on deck. Bill Brown, and then Lisa Mullen following that.
Hello, I am Ashley Norton, and I am coming to you tonight to speak as a parent and a former employee of WPSD about our vision, mission, and strategic plan. Prior to working in this district, I taught for 9 years in Texas, and within this district, I taught from August 2016 until June 3rd of this year. I taught social studies, both on level and AP classes, as well as being an advisor of the Leadership Student Council organization and PLC facilitator. My family is leaving the district to move to another state. Per our district website, the mission statement of WPSD is a place of becoming. Honestly, I don't know what we are becoming. Are we becoming a school district of division that cannot be bridged? Are we becoming a district of the board's way or no way? Are we becoming a district rampant with fear and intolerance? Our district's mission statement is to embrace a culture where all learners are empowered to pursue intellectual, personal, and collective excellence. The definition of embrace is to accept or support willingly and enthusiastically, and empower is defined as to make someone stronger and more confident. Based on the mission statement, the students are at the center of what WPSD should filter all decisions through. You have heard from numerous WPSD learners that they enjoy the classes that make them think beyond themselves, and yet the perception of the public was the civil disobedience class, which is an elective course, was under scrutiny by the board for possible controversial topics, even though it follows district policy. There have been statements made by the board that have made students feel less than. There are students who are wanting to speak with the board about their experiences within this district, who are afraid to because they have read and heard comments or seen behavior that makes them feel worried about the possible repercussions by the board. Is that empowering and embracing our WPSD students? Our students of WPSD will need to compete with their peers in the work sector, an institute of higher learning, and or the military. They will be competing with thousands of others for placements within these aforementioned areas. Is the board empowering them with their actions? Are we funding appropriately, like for theater, band, fire, forensics, art, CTE courses such as welding, culinary arts, and computer science, athletic programs, and facilities? I have seen multiple grants written, GoFundMes, and other fundraisers run by sponsors and students just to keep supplies available, fees paid, the programs to stay afloat, and be able to compete at higher levels, including purchasing equipment and food for events students have to travel to. Are we being fiscally responsible and preparing our students for their futures? Do students and their programs have what they need? Our district strategic plan uses language such as fostering an exceptional, positive, and empowering work environment when discussing optimizing educator talent. For the educators of this district, if we were to rate the board of directors as individuals, say that you have upheld that plan. Also in the district strategic plan, it states under the academic success section that students will have all opportunities and choices available as they move through our district and beyond. I find it important to state the key phrase, will have all opportunities and choices again. By possibly cutting courses that students enjoy that might have controversial topics or limiting the students' access to knowledge through courses and experiences that you might not find personally valuable and are not funding programs the best that you can, are you as a board upholding this statement? I'm afraid of what is to come for this district if the bar of empowering and embracing all WPSD students is not upheld and it is not figured out what we are becoming. My son, who is a student at Columbine Elementary, asked why people hate teachers. We, of course, had a conversation about the topic, and it came to light that he heard it on the playground from his peers that there are people in the community that hate teachers. He, of course, was disheartened because he wants to be a science teacher, and he doesn't want to be hated. This is through the eyes of an 8-year-old. An 8-year-old who still believes in Santa Claus and the tooth fairy. What is happening in this district is seeping into the lives of small children. I wish I had an opt-out form for that conversation with my son. What are we becoming? There has been a divide in our community that is continuing to grow. I am suggesting focusing on what can be done for the WPSD students to achieve the lofty mission statement on our website. Dig into what can be done by evaluating the actions and decisions based on the strategic plan to support our students, our staff, and our families of WPSD rather than our own personal politics and beliefs, because the word all means even the residents of WPSD who didn't vote for you. I challenge you to start building bridges because all students deserve that of us. I leave you with this. It has been my pleasure and honor to serve the students and families of Woodland Park High School for 6 years. I have found an administration who is supportive and encourages us to be our best selves every day. I have found colleagues who have become family to me. I have had students who have made me a better educator. I have had families of students rally around me in times of joy and in times of my deepest sorrow. I will miss each of them. I hope that all stakeholders mentioned will hold the board and each other to the standard of embracing and empowering all students of WPSD, as they are our most cherished gift in this world. To my students, demand better of yourself and this world. When you face hardship, put your hands on your hips, lift your chin, and say, watch me. I don't feel that my work is done here, but my dad always told me that my work is done when I'm dead. So I will continue to work for students as they pursue their goals and dreams, because that is truly who I work for, the students. Thank you.
Bill Brown. Lisa Mullen.
In 2021, voters elected conservatives to school board throughout Colorado in what was part of a nationwide referendum on the amount of control and visibility parents have with their children's education. Board meetings in most of these districts have since been volatile. What we've seen in the Woodland Park School District is no exception. I've submitted over 35 core requests in the last 2 months, with the goal of providing parents a window to see what is actually happening within the walls of the Woodland Park School District. I've learned that we've been lied to. Systemic racism, CRT, and gender fluid training is present in the district. Principals and other administrators have been involved with an active cover-up to keep our parents in the dark. The Woodland Park Education Association has claimed in the past they're not part of the national union group, and they're just here to protect the interests of all teachers. This too, I've discovered is a lie. Some of this information is being released this evening. All will be released in time. The parents in our district deserve to know the truth. In an email released through Cora, written January 12, 2022, the Vice President of the WPEA wrote this to a union member. Quote, the most important piece is that we continue to have teachers, whether a part of the WPEA or not, attend these meetings. It is the only way to continue to hold the board accountable at this time, though we are working closely with the PPEA for other methods of disruption. Let me repeat that quote. We are working closely with the PPEA for other methods of disruption. He later notes, we have not sent out mass communication to all members about WPEA leadership's thoughts on the newly elected school board and steps we've considered taking since the election. There are a few reasons for that. I'd be happy to discuss those outside of the email. The organized disruption by the WPEA is evident in other emails. Shortly after the school board voted to approve the MOU for Merit Academy, the WPEA treasurer sent an email to members asking they distribute an email to all staff that read, with the support of the Pikes Peak Education Association and the Colorado Education Association Legal Department, we're pursuing legal avenues to address these actions. A series of legal and public disruption efforts followed in an attempt to halt the Merit Academy chartering process under the guise of open meeting law violations, much like what was observed in Douglas County and other places. An email early the next month to all staff announced recurring Friday afternoon collaborative meetings at the home of the WPEA treasurer, in which the union would provide food and drinks. Just last week, the president of the WPEA blasted an email to all high school staff when the civil disobedience course, which does contain CRT material, but we'll get to that another time, made it onto the school board agenda. Predictably, staff and some of the usual opponents of the school board showed up to the meeting and towed the company line in yet another act of disruption. The disruption at the Woodland Park school board meetings matches the NEA playbook, summed up in a blog post on their website entitled, "How to Oust a Right-Wing School Board." The dramatic and fierce opposition this board has encountered is not at all organic. The parents and the voters of this district are being lied to. The core results validating the claims of the speech will now be distributed to the board. I promise there's more to come. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Bill Brown, Lisa Mullins, and Patricia, and I can't pronounce your last name, I apologize, will be after Lisa Mullins, followed by Kenton Walker. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Dr. Neal, would you go ahead and start, please?
Yes.
I chose not to say anything for the first minute of my time here this evening. In all honesty, I expect that this board will have heard just as much during my minute of silence as you will while I am actually speaking, because you have made it clear that you are not listening to people and what they have to say. Nevertheless, I am going to share 3 issues with you tonight. 1, you keep characterizing those of us who oppose you as anti-merit academy. This simply is not true. Are there people who've been speaking that did not want merit in our district? Well, of course there are, and we know the truth of that. But many, including myself, who have stood before you, and there are many others who are in the community that oppose you, not because of merit academy, not because of school choice. As a matter of fact, many of us support school choice. We simply disagree with the way merit has been approved and those who are being hurt in the process of accommodating merit. Similar to my first point, you constantly claim that there is a small liberal minority that are the only ones who object to the manner in which you are running our school district. This is also untrue. There are many individuals in our community, including many teachers, who are considered conservative by any traditional definition of the word, and we are opposed to you. To be clear, these people are conservatives, and they are disgusted with the unethical way this board has gone about doing its business. Again, to be clear, there are many of us. We are conservative, and we are opposed to this board. 3, at these board meetings, we have heard comments, and I expect to hear more tonight, from individuals who are connected to Merit Academy about horrible things that have been said about them. About merit students who have been confronted because they belong to that school. And to be really honest with you, that breaks my heart. No student should have to deal with that. And I am grieved that merit students and staff have to deal with this type of behavior. Likewise, I know of instances where individuals, both adults and students, who are connected to merit that have been disrespectful to students and staff from our district elementary schools, from Woodland Park Middle School, and from Woodland Park High School. Indeed, I've had some of those comments directed at me because I teach at Woodland Park High School. This behavior is also wrong and should not be tolerated. Now, what is the piece that is common to all of this behavior? It is the fact that members of this board are the ones who have modeled this behavior through their actions, through their demeanor, through their attitudes, and by doing so are encouraging people to behave this way. People are doing what you have modeled for them. And I simply implore you tonight to stop modeling this behavior. Quit dismissing and demonizing those who disagree with you.
1 minute.
Work at hearing what they have to say and honestly consider their questions and concerns. Maybe then we can return to being a community who treats everyone, Merit and other schools, with respect and dignity.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. We have Lisa Mullen, Patricia, Kitten Walker, and then following Ms. Walker is Sean Peckham.
Today I stand here as a concerned parent. I too have some of the aforementioned emails that we received through Coral to discuss with you. My unfortunate topic is the very controversial one of critical race theory and such other ideologies. I believe we have been lied to, and this has been promoted even at the highest level of this district, from the administration down to some teachers, based on the emails that I have here. Email packet number 1 from March and April of 2021 consists of a discussion between the administration, principals, and other staff of the district about interest in the attendance of a series about systemic racism and promoting equity in schools. This free series was focused on the attendance of leaders who can influence, advocate, and enact district policy. There was also discussion of forming an equity team for the district. You will see comments of staff eager to not only be a part of this, but to enact teams to push this onto our children. The same argument against CRT being taught in our schools can be applied to teaching systemic racism or things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our schools cannot embrace an ideology that is damaging to our students' intellectual and emotional growth. These ideologies require students to see themselves not as individuals, but as representatives of some predetermined group, such as an oppressor or oppressed group. Email packet number 2 that I have consists of emails within the district as well. Apparently, someone questioned the board of directors, and I have to make note that this was prior to the last election. So most of you, and including our superintendent, probably isn't aware of that. But the question that was posed as to whether or not a school or a teacher in the district was using the 1619 project or critical race theory. These emails refer to this concerned parent or citizen, we don't know who he or she is, as the complainant. You will read comments of staff who support CRT and the 1619 project, as well as similar ideologies. Some claimed the 1619 project was a good program. Another teacher added that they read a book called The Color of Law, which they admitted feeds into CRT. This same individual admitted that they hope to bring the concept of both the book and the theory into their teaching. Has it been? We don't know. It's been a year. Another teacher admitted to have used a little bit from the 1619 project. People who questioned the 1619 project were referred to in these emails as education critics and right-wing zealots. The response by the administration to the board seems to make light of the actual responses of their staff to the question that was posed to them. CRT believes racism, just for those who don't understand, believes racism is present in every aspect of life, in every relationship, and in every interaction. Therefore, its advocates look for it everywhere. In a school setting, this means teaching our children to think this way and always be looking for it. They will learn to eventually call each other out and reject one another because tolerating racism is also considered a form of racism. That would have to be discovered and stopped. It's similar to the diversity, equity, and inclusion concept and the idea of systemic racism. In 1619 project, that is a journalism piece. It's not really a curriculum. It's based largely on lies and mistruths that was labeled false by leading American historians who happen to be liberals, if we're going to go with parties there. It's not historically accurate curriculum. It pre-labels America as a racist, similar to the theories and ideologies mentioned earlier. Most parents that I have spoken to do not want their children educated on radical divisive ideology, and most teachers do not want to teach it. I know a few who have mentioned it as well. You have staff afraid to speak up over this. It may be a good idea to initiate some conversations with your staff on these topics. The new directors were in part elected based on your desire to prevent these radical divisive ideologies from our district and to represent us parents. I believe that is why in part you were targeted even prior to being elected. Parents want transparency and a say into what their kids are learning. Parents do have the right to say so in the education of our children in school, contrary to the belief of some who support these ideologies.
1 minute.
I implore you to stand firm and not hand off your power. How can parents trust the district when we see this kind of correspondence and what else maybe they be lying about? Please investigate this. If this much is found on this topic in 2 email threads, how much is really out there? We don't have a problem with equality and we're not racist, but what we do have a problem with is socialist-inspired equity and radical divisive ideology. Our children are not inherently racist, it's learned. These theories and ideologies create racism and division instead of life skills and respect. You, this board of directors, are what stands between our children and these ideologies. Please continue to be strong for our children. And I just have to say, we have supported teachers our entire career, and I believe with all my heart that most teachers don't buy into this. And thank you very much for your time. Do you want the emails?
Thank you for your comments. Kelly, if you would mind taking the Patricia, followed by Kitten, and then Sean, and then Jean Harris will be after Sean.
Hello, my name is Patricia. This fall, we have a 5-year-old entering kindergarten here in Woodland Park. I'm here today because there's been a lot of back and forth on the quality of education, teachers, schools, and what is being taught in Woodland Park schools. To me, kindergarten is a place where kids continue building and improving the foundation their parents or caregivers have built. They're perfecting counting, making new friends, learning what makes the kids around them different and unique. They're hopefully getting better at sharing and starting to learn more about their emotions, how to control their emotions, and how to better please them. This foundation is critical because as a child progresses in school and new information is presented, and as they get older and experience new events around them, they're able to rely on that foundation to guide them towards what is wrong and right, and what they can do to make this world a better place. Kindergarten is meant to teach foundational principles and core values, and not divisive one-sided views about complex events and topics. When you are introducing extremely complex and divisive topics into their world, you are taking away their childhood and introducing them to a world of hate and evil. You're traumatizing these children, perpetuating the very evil and hate that you allegedly want to get rid of. Instead of teaching kids to see each other as different beings in color, kids should be taught that yes, we're all different, but we're all unique. We are all necessary, and we all have a heart, and we all bleed red. That seems like common sense to me, and I hate that I even have to say this, but political propaganda that is dividing this country should not be taught to a child that's in kindergarten. In 2021, a Woodland Park kindergarten teacher from Columbine Elementary by the name of Peggy Wallace had an article published in Colorado entitled, "The Election, the Capital Tech, and the Black Lives Matter Come to a Kindergarten Classroom in Rural Colorado." Peggy is part of Teach Plus, an organization that is guiding teachers to bring in divisive curriculum to schools. After reading about Peggy, about the books she reads in her class, about her intention, I realized Peggy and I probably agree on many things. That's the irony here. At the end of the day, most of us want what's right for our children and for the world. It's just their perception of what's right and wrong is so different. Although she claims her job is to build a new generation of empathy and understanding, in an article she states her disdain the people of Woodland Park several times, including the majority's political stance and the ignorance and hate that is rooted in Woodland Park. She was also a panelist in a podcast titled How to Teach About the Insurrection. This is a kindergarten teacher. At first, she herself states that in kindergarten, children are just starting to realize the existence of others as they move beyond their egocentric nature. But then she continues to discuss all the extremely complex and divisive topics that she teaches in her classroom. Imagine, I'm a 5-year-old and I'm just waking up to the real world, other kids, their families, and simultaneously I'm being taught about hate, anger, and evil. How can a woman who has been a teacher for 16 years think that this is an appropriate concept for children in kindergarten? Long story short, many parents complain about her controversial curriculum to the principal. I reviewed the emails that were sent between the principal, the director of HR, and the assistant superintendent. Their only concern was about how to address potential bad press. Along with many complaints in the letter, which has been forwarded, which was published in the Courier, and I echo with the questions that the writer raised. Is instruction on BLM, social justice, voter suppression, combating ignorance, propaganda, and conspiracy in your kindergarten curriculum? What are examples of not obvious segregation issues informing 5-year-olds about? As a social justice warrior teacher has admitted to presenting children with controversial political content, voted to influence their children's views on such matters, what actions have you taken to investigate possibly inappropriate political indoctrination to correct this apparent problem? The response to Columbine Elementary did not address the questions and gave extremely vague responses without ever addressing what is truly being taught in school. Or
Mr. Vice President, I must take issue. This is a personnel matter. Her personnel file is retained still under for legal review, and I would defer to our attorney.
Until July 1st, she still is an employee.
Can I get an attorney comment on this, please?
She's had a person in the right to speak about things that are in the public. Out there, so
I'm not going to take the issue, but I would appreciate advice. Mr. Vice President, how would you like to proceed here?
I'm done talking about it, by the way.
okay, I mean, we were a little late.
I was dealing with another recall. Mr. Russell fell off.
Move on from the-
No worries, I was done.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your flexibility.
Sure. Since we have a child entering kindergarten, it was a great exercise for me to go and review what the Colorado Academic Standards for Kindergarten is, or are. So, let's see. Here's what you can for combining. Identify the major food groups and the benefits of eating a variety of foods. Recognize the relationship between emotions and actions. Something I haven't seen from most adults these past 2 years, and definitely something I haven't seen from several adults use media. Other things, math stuff, music stuff, science stuff, art stuff. And then we get to social studies. Ask questions and discuss ideas about the past. The sequence of events is important when describing the past. Recognize that geographic tools represent places and spaces. People live in different places around the world. Individuals make choices based on wants. Describe choices people make about how to use the money they earn. And then we get to understand that civic participation is placed in multiple groups and in various forms. Remember, this is kindergarten. They're talking about voting, debating, volunteering, protesting, but also practicing citizenship, such as courtesy, honesty, equity, and fairness when working with others. Also, participate in making fair and reasoned decisions using democratic traditions. But again, kindergarten. So we're talking about why rules are needed, how to create and follow rules, how class rules promote fairness. Again, this is kindergarten. Kindergarten is meant to teach foundational principles and core values, not divisive, one-sided views about complex events and topics. Let's work together to shape these kids' lives. Let's also look at children. Children need to be children. Thank you.
Stephen Walker, followed by Sean Pekron, followed by Gene Harris, followed by Athea, I believe. Pardon me, my mispronunciation.
Okay, so, my name is Kitten Walker. I'm a resident homeowner of Woodland, and I would like to open with prayer. So, Heavenly Father, I thank you that your word is true. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 19 says, "There must be division among you, for that is how the genuine are known." So, Father, I thank you that this board has demonstrated your word and shown it to be true. In Jesus' name, amen. So I'd like to talk about the division on the board and how this division has shown those that are genuine and are standing and doing what they ran to do. So there is a board member who voted against Merit being chartered because he didn't have all his questions answered. I question why in 6 months he didn't have his questions answered. He gave fake news last week when he said that the results of the survey said that Woodland Park community did not want the changes. The other board members found the survey and showed that this was false. That there was, I guess I would say, a tie for those that wanted it and those that didn't. There are other examples of this board member creating division or showing himself not unified with the other board members. So I just want to point out that those elected board members are doing what they ran to do. They are doing a good job, and they are showing themselves to be known as genuine. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments this evening, Ms. Petra.
All right, I wasn't going to speak on this one subject, but it dovetails pretty good with the presentation we had here earlier. So this is a letter going to Dr. Neal.
Use the mic.
In regards to.
Use the mic. Right.
Okay, so this is a letter that I wrote to Dr. Neal in July of, let's see, 7/21/21 last summer. And I'll start with that. Greetings and welcome, Matthew. I hope you and your family are settled in and doing well in our beautiful community. So, I have just closed out the real platform training for the week. Now, I have just retired from Woodland Park after 24 years in the district. I am now officially concerned with the direction of the Woodland Park School District and our leadership. As you know, yesterday's code word was equity. Now, this is in the training for the Summit Learning, which is called REAL at the high school. So it was equity across three sessions. So that was on Monday. Equity outcomes indicate Marxist leanings. I looked that up, just doing some research, and it was on the BLM, Black Lives Matter, which has Marxist leanings, and it was right there on the first page. So that was that very Monday. So I thought to myself, what's tomorrow's word? Okay. Equity outcomes indicates Marxist leanings. Predictable from the source. Today's code word, which is Tuesday, systemic racism. So the district is now officially embracing critical race theory. This fear among many parents in our county has now come to fruition. This concern was addressed to my wife by multiples of constituents while she was on the school board. She was assured that the real platform training was being, quote, reviewed. This is still the letter, remind you. Linda Murray indicated the district, to the Board of Education, that the district is not expanding the Summit Learning Platform. Yet leadership at the high school and apparently at the central office has been pressuring teachers to take this training, so, quote, all teachers are trained in Summit Learning. And I just learned on Sunday that our HR director sent out in March of last year, a directive that I think Mr. Dion alluded to earlier. The district's curriculum is supposed to reflect the values and desires of the taxpaying community. I believe that the Summit Learning Platform does not do this, but does the opposite. It is divisiveness and racism against the majority of our students. I am of the opinion that we should, in bold, run away from the Summit Learning Platform or other programs with CRT Foundation doing windows, not embrace or cultivate it in our community. I would also maintain that the community needs to retain locus of control with the importation of curriculum and exportation of student information and data to be stored, manipulated, and profited by omnipotent entities of a select few tech companies. Shame on us for subjecting our students and community to this quote platform. Okay, so now my original thing was thanks, so I'm going to give thanks. Okay. Greetings, I come tonight to express gratitude and thanks. I recently retired from WPSD. I would like to thank students, parents, and taxpayers for having been able to spend 24 years with the district. When I first came in the district, I thought I had been dropped in the sound of music. But now, as the culmination of my career, it's more like a woke Game of Thrones. So there's that. Okay, I would specifically like to thank Directors Patterson and Illingworth. Your steadfastness and perseverance in treacherous waters has been inspiring. In your campaigns, you told voters what you would do as members of the board and as board members, and have delivered for your constituents and community. Thank you to Gary Brevetto and Director Illingworth. You were adamant about pay raises for staff. I am thankful for your efforts and that of our newly elected school board for this historical event for WPSD.
1 minute. In respect to your 24 years, thank you.
Here, this is for you. Superintendent Matthew Neal, thank you for the plethora of lessons I have learned from you. I've watched with newfound appreciation the way you have deftly used thousands of dollars of district monies on 2 poorly done studies, passive office due diligence, and use these studies as tools to dilute
Mr. Illingworth, I would
and
consider this
control
to
the
be my
direction area.
I have the right to call for an executive session. If there's anything regarding my personnel evaluation, I would ask that executive session to be called if Mr. Pecron is going to continue to assail my character.
I'm just telling you what I'm giving you the facts. You want the facts?
The facts, my personnel evaluation are
Give me
actually.
direction on that from Steve.
Matthew, how is this a personnel evaluation of you?
He is personally claiming.
Yeah, how is it not?
Silence!
I would prefer further comments about me to be further addressed in private.
Should I write to the newspaper then and put them in the newspaper as well? I would like to continue on here, but I can put it somewhere else. But I would like to continue here.
I would ask that the conversations about my personal record would be
Wasting
skipped
tax
over.
dollars is going on and on, it's an attack.
Ms. Morris? Can you remain quiet? Are you gonna be able to do that?
Brevity on the comments would be appreciated.
I've not received any legal advice from our attorney about this in particular. Ms. Barber, reference provided something last week that was not shared with myself, I think, or another member of the board. Ms. Barber, do you have anything you can communicate to me?
Sounds like she wants to do that privately. Thank you, Mr. Peckron, for the pause.
You're welcome.
Yes, David, I think we need to maybe bring the volume up a little bit. Okay, right on the end, David.
All right, how's the volume now?
Pretty good.
Okay, upon legal consideration, we are going to allow the speaker to continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Peckron,
How much time do we have?
for about 2 minutes.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to continue giving thanks to Matthew. I'll start over. Thank you for the plethora of lessons I've learned from you. I've watched with newfound appreciation the way you have definitely used thousands of dollars of district monies on G40 studies, passed them off as due diligence, then used these studies as tools to dilute, stall, and control the direction, narrative, and initiatives of our publicly elected school board. I have noted the way you insulated yourself with the central office staff to avoid responsibility or liability as if it is second nature. The way you have downplayed the board's work, ideas, and initiatives as if they were yours, then use them to advance your career. Outstanding, sir. Quietly applying for another job, then when turned down, write a nice letter of loyalty to our staff and community, espousing your newfound loyalty. Thank you for that reassurance. Remember when you squired Gary Rovetto around the high school, let him get teed up, then basically be harassed by a student and a counselor at the next school board meeting after that? Then you did and said nothing to rectify the situation immediately. It took a while for you to rectify it, and then you made Gary sound at fault by saying he was remorseful at the next board meeting. Classic. Then it was Director Illingworth's turn when he went to pick up his daughter at Gateway. More gender controversy. Great tools for maintenance of the administration power structure. You let the damage sink in and gave no consequences to the parties that falsely reported this.
1 minute.
My gratitude on that lesson as well. There are many more examples of things I have learned from and about Matthew in a short time in the district. Thanks again. I would like to thank the small group of individuals who are trying to basically usurp the will of the voting public by trying a recall. My thanks lie in the reminders you all have given me on the ridiculousness and uselessness of spending $120,000 of tax money on a recall during a potential upcoming recession based on nothing, and thanks for nothing, actually. Lastly, I would like to thank a former school board member who never got recognized for the tremendous impact she had on the district, Dr. Gwen Peckron, who after serving on the WPS school board, conceived and achieved the Tax Ballot Initiative 2016, paying off bonds and delivering to Teller County schools $14 million approximate to date and counting. She never got any recognition for that. $14 million and counting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Peckron, for your comments. Jean Harris, followed by Athea. And Thea, can you say your last name, please? I can't, if you're still here.
Say your last name, Althea.
Althea?
Yes, ma'am.
Devonish?
Thank you, I appreciate it. Sorry about that. And then I've got Catherine Wheeler and Jonathan Wright. We'll close out the evening. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just would like to have an action item expressed regarding the following. I know at one of the previous school board meetings, there was quite a bit of hoopla over censorship of books in our library. So I'm calling for the board to bring some of those books into this public forum so they can be reviewed by whoever wants to attend. And let's see what's in those books, right here in front of everyone. The vision statement, I forget the exact title, but I think everybody knows in front of us, says, you know, we're to here to embrace all. But it seems like we're promoting a few instead of embracing all of these schools. That's being done instead of teaching real life skills like reading, writing, math. Something that's going to allow our students to succeed in the workplace instead of socially divisive topics. That's really not the place I would agree to be taught, particularly if it's being discussed in kindergarten, grade schools, and so forth. So just to quote Debbie Arnett, it sounds to me like the WPA and some others have some explaining to do.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Harris.
Yes.
And thanks for your patience on your last name pronunciation. I apologize. Go ahead.
You're welcome, sir. Good evening, everyone. My name is Althea Devonish, and I am a resident and have been a resident of this district for the last 4 years. As you can tell, I have a little accent. I'm an immigrant to this beautiful and wonderful country. A country to which so many people would like to come to and would like to be a part of this nation. I'm going off topic a little bit, but let me just say this. I do mission work, and I travel to many, many countries. And when people see me, they don't see me as an African American. They see me as an American. And they all want to come here. We have teams on the team. We have people from Germany, England, Chile, America. We have people from Belarus, Ukraine. And of all the countries that we represent, the people flock to the Americans. And they all say, I want to come to America. So what I'm saying, you have a beautiful country. America's a very beautiful country and built upon such good foundation. And we've allowed the enemy to try to snatch and take our nation because of differences in color. God made us of different colors. Which one of us will have a garden, and in that garden you'll have just white roses or red roses? But when you have a garden, you want pink roses, red roses, azaleas, different kinds of flowers, because why? It represents God's variety. And so I'm here, I'm going off script, I guess, but I'm here to encourage us. We are beautiful people. America is beautiful. I came in this country and I got a scholarship. I was in a scholarship to help my schoolwork. My niece, the same thing happened to her, and she's now a lawyer. So I'm saying there's so many good things if we were to place our emphasis on the good. But you know what? The devil is the one who brings the separation and division. If my child was to get in an accident right now, and his son or his daughter, needs a heart, and he can use my heart to give to his daughter, and they have the same blood type, it will work just as well. So teaching critical race theory is wrong. We need to let people know how valuable they are. We are valuable in this matter of what the color of our skin, where we come from. I am proud to be born in Trinidad and Tobago. I thank God because God put me there. But I'm ever so proud to be an American. I'm so proud to be here. I'm so proud to be a part of your legacy. So don't let man is fallen. And because of the fall, the sin of man, we have allowed race issues, we have allowed, male and gender issues, we have allowed different things to come to separate us. But we are human beings, and we are made in the image and likeness of God. And I just want to say, I've been off script a whole lot, but I just felt in my heart, I like to speak from my heart. You may have a beautiful country, we are beautiful people. Yes, we might have different colors, different nationalities, but we all came from somewhere in America. And we must stand and fight together to uphold this nation. And we must stand for our children. Our children are our heritage. Our children are the ones who are supposed to come and take our place. So we need to spend time and impart to our children the right virtues, the right morals, the right things. And to be a good citizen, to be someone who can live the dream. This is a country where there's freedom. We need to go sometimes to Eastern Europe. People walk there, they walk with their heads down. They're not, when they see me, they find that I'm different because I stand, in the authority which God has made me. They don't know the authority God has made them, so they all bow down and they're not as we are here. They're not as free. Anyway, I just want to say. I just want to close with Dr. Martin Luther King, a few words that he said. He said, I have a dream that one day in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with white boys and white girls as brothers and sisters. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand together for freedom. Knowing this, we will be free in Jesus' name. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom to reign, then we will let it ring from every village and every hamlet and every state and every city. We'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men, white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. God bless you, Lord. God bless you. God bless you, everyone here. And God bless America. Thank you.
Catherine Wheeler, followed by closing out with Jonathan Wright.
I was just signing in.
Thank you. It's the shortest public comment yet this year, so thank you. Almost every start having like a door prize, but everything's nice. Thank you for signing in, and thank you. While I've got it, thank you for your service on the District Accountability Committee. So I appreciate that as well. Close the evening, sir.
All right, that's a hard act to follow. Someone who was very, very eloquent, someone who was very, very fast. I did not have a prepared speech tonight, and I'll keep it quick. It's a very, very important role in our community, and I thank you, all of you, for the work that you've done. I thank the school board for pushing forward on Merritt Academy. My children attend that school. I have a personal connection with Merritt Academy. I love it. I'm so proud of the community for what we've achieved. And I believe that we will all benefit because of it. There are some scary things in these emails. I've got an opportunity to read them, to record with them. And the board, what I want to say to you is please do not allow anyone to remove hope from our children. One of the worst things that you can do to any person is take away their hope. If you tell certain children that they have a system rigged against them, and that they will not succeed because the rules won't allow them to succeed because other people are going to keep them down, you will remove hope from that child. If you tell a child that they are guilty of collective racial guilt because of the sins of their ancestors, and that they must carry that guilt and that blame, you will take away that child's hope. I believe in the spirit of the previous speaker, Althea, I believe was her name, that we can come together, we can realize a dream. So I'm asking you, board, please read what's in those emails. Understand that it is divisive, it is dangerous, and it will take away the hope from our children. Thank you.
So I apologize for my texting this evening. I'm trying to keep up with Mr. Russell Holtz on the road while also keeping things going. Mr. Russell Holtz, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
That is the end of public comment, sir.
Okay. Then we are on to number 6, board executive expectations.
Sorry, I think there's one more right before that consent agenda, sir.
Okay. Consent agenda was not done during our approval of the agenda.
No, sir.
Okay. Let's continue on the consent agenda then. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda calendar?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
You received a motion and a second, sir.
I heard, roll call vote.
Austin.
Aye.
Illingworth.
Aye.
Patterson. Aye. Russell Wilson.
Aye. Thank you. Now, we're on to Roman numeral number 6, board executive expectations, information, and action.
Just 1 minute while I organize my notes.
Thank you, Dr.
I also wanted to give some feedback that audio apparently for people streaming is not good.
This is what happens when Mr. Tuttle goes on vacation. Kelly, any ideas for audio? We'll try to speak louder, absolutely.
David, how is your audio?
I'm hearing you very well.
Were you able to hear the,
Tina and Brian, if you could come to the podium, please.
Say that again, David?
were you able to hear the speakers okay?
Yes, I was. I was. But now I'm sitting here in Amarillo.
David, are you listening to it over YouTube or
No, I cannot hear the YouTube audio, and the camera is very, very fuzzy. It's not focused in. So I am listening, it's just over the cell phone.
Minus Miles's list when he returns. Sorry, for members of the public that are online, that's about all I can do at this time. We do still have seats available in the audience if you'd like to hop on over and join us. This evening, members of the board, we have a unique executive limitation policy, and the way that it's voiced is really from a legal standpoint that we as a district will not allow unlawful or imprudent practice within the district. And you could extrapolate or spread this out from Sean Coney standing in the back of the room as safety and security to our financials, to our academics. And the statement that I simply provide is we are not under current litigation for the responsibilities of staff. So an example would be our audit was received without findings. We don't have any illegal activities either being pursued or having concluded during this year. Neither do we have the same for HR. Neither do we have the same for anything related to student services. And so this is a really short affirmation that we are not under unlawful, unethical, or imprudent practices at this time. And that's about the shortest EE that we could have done for the entire year. If you have any specific questions or illustrations, we'll be happy to try to address those. Obviously, with Mr. Garrett out this evening for personal reasons, as well as Mr. Tuttle, they're both on a much needed break. So I can try to answer things on their behalf.
Are there any questions for Dr. Neal?
I do know also I talked with Marcy Palmer today, and we have also no due process filed against the district this year. Probably that's the first time in many years, right? With special education.
Thank you, Tim. Hearing none, if you wouldn't, unless there was one that I missed, if you wouldn't mind evaluating on your EE 8.
Do I have Dr. Neal, I need a motion to accept the information that you just read.
You are correct. I stepped over too far.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Patterson. Aye. Russell.
Aye. Now, you can continue with that, Dr. Neal.
So Kelly is going to answer Mr. Ellingsworth's direct question.
This is the entire board, this is a little bit different, it's not a new work. Remember, training is supply or not supply.
Dr. Neal, ready to move on?
Just one moment, please.
Yeah, the camera is very blurry, it's just hard to see what's going on.
Take it to All right, members of the board, if I could take a moment of leisure as the fine gentleman standing before you is going to complete his, Brian, is this your 7th budget?
10 or 11.
11th budget, thank you. I'll lose track of time, sorry. This evening, before we begin, I'd like to introduce a new valued member of our staff. As just having been approved Leanna Talley's application and credentials. She is our new Executive Director of Business Services. And so, Ms. Talley is a certified public accountant with a license number listed here that I can give you. I don't know if those things are confidential or not. So she does have her Series 7 in securities, life, health, and long-term care insurance licenses. She has a master's degree in accountancy from Colorado State University. She is trading places with Mr. Gustafson, who is moving to her town of Fort Collins while she moves here to Woodland Park. But her husband is a graduate of Woodland Park schools, and so it's great to welcome them back to the Woodland Park community. She has previously been a controller, assistant controller for a very enviable Odell Brewing Company, and to which Brian and she have already compared notes on what he has for brewery tours up in Fort Collins, but I'll leave that private. She's a director of finance and accounting for Tandem Select, a company which I knew previously as well. She's a controller at the University of Northern Colorado Foundation, and she, quite frankly, she went through 2 rounds of searches and she kept raising to the top. And our staff are super excited to have her with us. She will have students in our system. So not only are we paying her, but she's also helping pay us for the students she's bringing, which is great. And it's great to have these two be able to do this work for these weeks of transition. So welcome very much, Leanna. And Brian, thank you as well for bringing her into your world during this time of transition. Brian is absolutely losing sleep trying to pack his family up and head out of town. And so it's not easy to have the new person show up in your final 2-3 weeks while you're trying to close things out and officiate the public hearing this evening that he's about to do. So welcome, Anna, and Brian, thank you as well for your tutoring and your help for her. Members of the board, that was
Just a quick reiteration, welcome. Thank you. You're upgrading with accounting smarts
and about $18,000. So, good stuff there. And Dan and I will be working through some things, but also.
Brian, would you defend the $18,000? I had a couple looks in the audience. So each student brings in about $9,000 So he's spoken well by the CFO.
Yeah, well, we talked about that 2 weeks ago. Per pupil rate about $9,200 per pupil, and so it is good to hear about more students working in the district. So that's exciting, and we'll be not only connected here off and on through June, but as we move through the school year as well, because it's kind of it's an, I guess, always moving cycle, and there's always ties back to the previous fiscal year while looking ahead to the next fiscal year while you're in the current fiscal year. So we'll be connected, and the staff here is excited to work with you. So thanks for doing this. We're going to talk about the budget for adoption tonight. Now, this is a continuation of 2 weeks ago when I gave the proposed budget to the Board of Education. I hit a lot of the big details, like per pupil rate, how we make money, how we spend money, those kinds of things. So I don't want to rehash a lot of things. I'm going to move on to the actual document a little bit after just reminding on some of the assumptions and why we do this. And when I get into the document, I'll refer by pages, and I'll put the document up here on the screen and talk about that. But just to refresh, remind ourselves, this is our fiscal plan to allocate resources to support what we do in the district. And that's based on the vision and strategic objectives as they're stated for the district. So we have to have that in mind all the time as we're building, implementing the budget. And it allows us to organize, control our spending, right, based on what we project right now for expected revenues and expenditures. But the great thing about school budgeting is it also has a flexibility component. And we have the opportunity up until January 31st of this fiscal year, so that'd be January 31 of 2023, to amend the budget or revise the budget based on the real information that comes through with regards to enrollment, the economy, etc. So this budget does provide those guardrails, does allow for that flexibility, and also sets aside contingencies for the just in case, the worst case scenarios. And so that's the why we do things. It is our roadmap. Just a quick jump back to, I think, January. I talked to the board about our district fiscal note. And so I just want to reiterate that this budget is based on a very strong and sound financial situation. We talked back in, I think it was EE11, we addressed EE8 and C, but I think it was EE11 as well, I can't remember exactly, about our fiscal situation, financial procedures, and we're strong. Our asset sufficiency ratio, that's often our assets compared to our debts, that's stable, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just want to show you that we're well above the benchmark, and that ratio is set by the Office of the State Auditor. Same with our debt burden ratio. We have very little debt. In fact, we don't have any real technical debt because of the sales tax issue that was mentioned earlier. We refunded 6.725, I believe, mills to property taxpayers in the district back in 2016-17. So we eliminated that at that time and reduced property taxes at that time. So now all we have are annually appropriated obligations in the form of certificates of participation. So our debt burden ratio is very stable, very good. Our operating reserve ratio actually is extremely positive, as is the operating margin ratio. Those deal with our fund balance. And these numbers come from the Office of State Auditor as of the fiscal year 21 audit. That's the end of 2020-21. These numbers won't be available for this year until next year. So Dan will get to talk about those. And we have actually increased our reserves in fiscal year 21. While the plan was to spend them down coming out of the pandemic, we actually increased those. And that's a similar story as far as fiscal year 22, where we can cover almost a half year with reserve. Now, we're going to use those for a little something, and I'll talk about that later. Also, We add about 5 cents to our reserves for every dollar we spend, or for every dollar we collect right now in revenue, and that's a healthy operating margin ratio. So I just wanted to show you that we're in good shape, and getting ready to talk about a $42 million budget. And these numbers are updated a little bit from what I shared a couple weeks ago, in that we made sure to get an additional grant in that we didn't have information on 2 weeks ago, and we made sure to provide some additional and updated assumptions with regards to facility use agreement and our charter school that's new to the district, and how that might look financially. And we did adjust a couple of department budgets that got some late information. So there are some changes. Or you received these on Friday, and I posted them online on Friday as well. So you have these numbers in front of you. Remember, when we're talking about the budget, we usually talk about the general fund. That's the main operating pot of money, $33 million for next year. And the other funds, some of which are sub-funds to the general fund, I won't get into all that. The other funds have really specific purposes: risk management, taking care of all of our insurance and our deductibles and things like that. Food service, self-explanatory. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Grants, those all have a specific purpose. The internal accounts at our schools are called pupil activity funds. We do have a transportation fund. And as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, we are creating a new capital projects fund to prioritize and initiate the results of the facilities master plan that is being put right now. Okay, so just a quick reminder on the assumptions that are going into this particular document. We're going with the same assessed value as fiscal year 22, or it's actually December of 2021 of this fiscal year. And without knowing exactly where that's headed in August, we'll start with that number, and then Mrs. Talley can amend that and adjust that to revised budget mid-year as she gets that information. We're operating on the assumption that we'll have 2,279 and a half funded pupils in the district, a little over 175 more than the current year. Remember, that's with the addition of 314 funded pupils in our new charter school and academy. And as I talked about, under the assumption of $9,120 per pupil year. Also a significant increase over the previous year. We talked about the budget stabilization factor last time. That's really where our budget is being assisted greatly, and that the state of Colorado has reduced its offsetting factor for next year. And we also talked about one of the primary assumptions in this budget as well, is that we have chartered a new school, Marion Catholic, for the fall. And since the last time I talked, we now have a facility use agreement. And so, as I mentioned, that has some adjustments in the budget as well. I just want to point out, as we talk about enrollment, it can get confusing. And there's really 3 types of enrollment we talk about. I'm going to try and stick as much as possible to funded pupil count. But what this illustrates is that the funded pupil count, as I mentioned before, is based on a 5-year average because we're a defining enrollment district. And we get funded, as you can see, at a higher level for that count than we do for actual students, which is here in red. That's the sort of health feature of the Colorado school funding formula. And it allows the easing of the burden, the easing of the pain of a significant enrollment drop. Next year, we expect our total head count in the district to be 2,066, okay, over 6 schools. This blue column, that's the number of those 2,066 that we actually get funding for. Okay? Some students are half students, homeschool students, classified differently. It's a pretty exact science and a lot of different counting that goes on with the buildings. It comes in October, and we expect that number to be just under 2,000 funded pupils in just next year. That goes into a formula that helps generate this number, and we expect to be funded at that number I already mentioned to you. But that just illustrates it. We're talking enrollment. You hear that a lot. People get upset, well, the district lost this many, or they had 1,800, and it can get confusing. Are you talking head count, FTE, or funded pupil count? And I really work to stick with funded pupil counts. So board, if you have questions, please chime in, whether I'm talking about one of the district counts or whatever question you have, actually. Okay. Now, in your packets, you have the budget for adoption. I'm going to go through a few of the pages, hit some highlights, and I'll put the budget up here. So I won't show you my notes. I'll show you the budget. I know it's hard to see, sorry, but it is online. And then there will be some updates that I'll post online as well. All right, if you look at page 2, you should see the pages at the bottom after the cover page, after the assessed for the public notice. Okay, page 2 is what we talked about last time. Our funded pupil situation where we saw the declining enrollment trend, that we had the spike of kindergarten funding a few years ago, the spike of charter school funding this coming year. I think those are going to be interesting to monitor over the next few decades as we look at the past few. And then the per pupil rate that I talked about, it's headed up over $9,000 for the first time in district history. Yeah. Sorry. What are you looking at? Okay, it's still page 2. Oh, you don't have the narrative in that particular. The updated one is online with the narrative attached. So we'll get there shortly. All right, on page 3, I do want to talk about page 3 a little bit down at the bottom. And board members, you have a new page 3. And you have the yellow sheet, which you got Friday. Okay, we made a couple adjustments as I just proofreading and found that we needed to make sure we corrected the assessment rate that's in that narrative. Now, when you approve the budget, you're not, this is the supplemental information. You're approving the dollars behind. Okay, down at the bottom, it talks on page 3 about our assessment rate being 6.95% on that new sheet. And that will go in the review document. Okay, that's the residential assessment rate. So as a taxpayer, right, myself, if I take my $300,000 home and I'm going to pay my 6.95% assessment rate on 28, just over 7 mils of tax the district is levying next year, that's going to be about $596 of property tax that I'm contributing to the district. Okay, so that's what this page talks about, is the tax impact on the citizens. It's important to note that the commercial assessment rate is still 29%, so significantly higher. On that same $300,000 of market value, the business will pay about $2,486 in tax. So those are the updated numbers there at the bottom of that narrative with regard to assessment rate. Another thing important to note, that's going to change a lot in the next 2 years. The legislature, the governor signed into law a new Senate bill that's going to keep adjusting these assessment rates, particularly for residential homes. And there will even be an additional, or I guess, precursory credit for residential property owners coming in 24 as well. And so that's going to get pretty confusing. I didn't want to put it all in here. And we're working with Leanna, the county assessor, county treasurer, so they can really make sure that they understand how that's going to impact us. Maybe the second half of next year, but definitely into 22, 26. Right, right now, we're working off of that 6.95% down from 7.95%. Okay, now, it's important to remember too that we're required to raise our mill levy by $1 million each year. Okay, so as that assessment rate's going down, we're raising our mill each year. What that's going to do next year is a net effect of about $5. So pay about $5 more than I would have with the current setup of 7.15 in the current mix. So kind of interesting, those are working against each other a little bit. We're trying to stay pretty high level, but that's pretty, it can be confusing stuff, so I'll ask that question. Additionally, on page 4, you can see the sales tax impact, and that certainly impacts our taxpayers in Woodland, but also folks that drive through and spend money here in the Woodland Park schools. And that's an updated chart of sales tax collection through the month of March. We usually receive that about 2 months in arrears. So you can see the orange line here for 2021/2022, moving through this fiscal year, is higher, probably about 5% higher this year for us than it was last year. Last year was a really big boom, about 15% higher than the previous. So moving along really well with collecting taxes. Our estimate next year is a little slower. I keep saying that, and then people find out some stuff. That's a good problem to have. But we're expecting probably more of a kind of a more normal 3% increase in sales tax collection. We have to talk with our folks at the county. We look at page 6. Let's skip ahead a bit. At the top of the page, it talks about some of the variables that impact the budget that we're monitoring pretty consistently. Things like rising inflation, big on everybody's mind right now. Other items like parasol visit. I don't know if you follow this, but PARA is the Public Employees Retirement Association, which the public employees like teachers and staff members at schools contribute for a pension after they retire. And it's struggled with getting itself to a point where it's considered solvent for the future. So they've got a plan in place where they continue to increase not only the employer obligation and contribution annually, but also the employee contribution. So those will continue to go up. Next year, our employees are going to be paying about 11% of their income into that pension, and the district will be contributing 21.4% on top of the salaries into the PEO. Okay, so that's something we continue to monitor, as that obviously is a rising cost. Legislative impacts are always something interesting to monitor. You never really know what you're going to get. You can usually count on there are going to be some legislators who try and impose ideas for a new public school formula, a finance formula, but pieces of it may be adopted and other pieces usually go away because of the complexity. Right? Okay, but it's always interesting to notice those. And as I just talked about, some property taxes may go up, assessment rates may go down. We have to figure out how all of that impacts school funding on a pretty consistent basis. And then strategic planning. Okay, things to think about as we're building not only this budget but future budgets. What's the strategy of the district? What's the vision? What's the plan? And how will that be implemented going forward? So that's something that we'll have to continue to monitor and weigh in on to get into the fall. At the bottom of page 6 and on to page 7, we talk about stimulus funding. That's the federal COVID stimulus money. And I'll just have you take a look at those bullets at the bottom of page 6, top of page 7. And those are how we plan to spend our ESSER dollars. Okay, that's the COVID relief funds that will be with the district through September of 2024. And the district accountability committee was great in contributing ideas, thoughts, feedback, and being listening basically over the last 2 years on how to spend these dollars. And so things like addressing learning loss is the biggest and most primary focus of using those ESSER funds. We have to figure out a way to address the learning lost by students as they come out of the pandemic and back into in-person learning. Fortunately, we were a district with a heck of a lot of in-person learning at that time, but it's still something that's impacting next year. Okay? making sure that we have remote learning supports, we address air quality. Those are other things that those ESSER funds will continue to be used for, as well as addressing mental health needs and educational technologies. Okay, on page 7, also in the narrative, is a little section about the new charter school, Merit Academy. And so I'm going to jump back to the ideas behind the budget, the flexibility part. Right? This is new and fast. New and fast when it comes to the planning of the dollars that are going to have to be exchanged, moved, allocated, spent on the implementation of having a new charter school in the district. Okay, so there's a little bit of narrative there, but what I did add too is the initial assumptions in the flow through funding that will come to the district and flow to Merit, as well as the buyback services that the district will withhold for the Merit agreement. Okay. All in all, the flow through looks like about $3.3 million coming into the district and flowing to Merit. Okay. But in there, the district will hold about $700,000 back for a variety of services. That will have to be adjusted. That's where I'm talking about flexibility. Because right now, it is so new and fresh that we're going to have to get into it, and those parties are going to have to work together really closely and collaborate honestly about what are these things really costing, what did we miss, what did we plan for, or where's the, we've got additional students, all that kind of stuff. It's really going to have to be discussed and adjusted for mid-year budget revision. So things like per pupil funding, mill levy override, sales tax revenue will all be flowing to Merit, as well as any IDEA money, which is special education money, along with early childhood education money, gifted and talented money as well. Buyback services will include administrative oversight, because the finance department here will have to assist with data uploads for Merit, as well as liaison services are in here as well. Special education oversight services, a lot of that still has to be figured out. Okay, but we have to try and put a dollar into it. So similar to a facility use agreement and charter contract, we apply per pupil dollars to those things. As well as preliminary facility use agreement upgrades to modify and improve the middle school facility to house Merit. Okay, there's an estimate of $150,000 a year. Portions of the maintenance, utilities, technology, internet access and needs will also be part of those buyback services. And then again, have to be evaluated for cost, and it is in the contract to be trued up as we go through the year. So after year 1, it's going to get a lot easier once we see what all those services are going to be. But that gives a little bit of a window into what's in the budget. You can't really see that stuff in just the general program line of the budget. So I want to make sure I include that. All right. Take a look. Let's jump to page 9. Hey, that's everybody. Board of Ed. Mr. Patterson, sorry I have you on italicized. I'll fix that before I fix it on mine. So it's like everybody else's. And I will update the Executive Director of Business Services. And I don't know if we have an assistant principal in middle school I can put in. So I'll update those things. So make sure I've got email addresses correct, please. And then let's jump ahead to page 13. We already talked about pages 10, 11, and 12, the budget basics. So we'll go to 13. Again, here's a page I had to update with the corrected and accurate residential assessment rate of 6.95%. And that's under the pertinent constitutional provisions down there, middle of the page. So that's just updated, as well as it has new references to the Senate bills that impact property taxes and the changing assessment rates. So that's kind of the for your information, or for the information of the reader. They want to dive in with more details. All right. Page 14. Page 14 has our projected assessed valuation. Mill levy count, I already mentioned, we're going to proceed with the same assessed valuation as an assumption to start this budget. And as we talked about last or 2 weeks ago, we do have to add 1 mill to that general fund levy next year for state law to get us up closer to that 27.0 general fund levy. Overall, we expect the tax mills, the district levies next year to be just over 28. So you can add another 6.5 to that. That's what it would have been had we not defeased bonds a number of years ago. So there was a time when we were in the mid-30s, and now it's still nice to live in the 20s as far as the mills that we're living in. Okay. Get more into the numbers a little bit. I'm not going to go line by line. But I'll just point out some interesting trends, some things to note. The far right column is the proposed budget. The column just to the left of that is our estimated actuals at the end of June of this year. The estimated actuals are estimated. We'll really learn what those are at the end of the year, but really, truly in the fall after we go through the audit process and we clean up, closing out the fiscal year. This is an interesting year in that the revenue looks a little bit understated, 22.1 million. And it looks understated because some of the accounting that will occur with the charter school is going to be in the form of what's called negative revenue. Right? So when we have the mill levy override, instead of it being an expenditure, and this is at the advice of our auditors, instead of it being on the expenditure side of the books, it's really a negative revenue. It's going to come right out of our property tax revenue and flow to the charter school. So we show that as a negative revenue. So you see charter school allocation, MLO, negative $151,000. Similar, and that works similar to how we account for allocations to our sub-funds, like risk management, $419,000 is a negative revenue. And the new fund that we're building, capital projects fund, that's a negative revenue of $2 million. So there will be more money that comes in. Some of it gets redistributed to other funds, and some goes to the charter school. That's what those negative revenues represent. Under state sources, you can see charter school, state equalization, that's negative almost $3 million. That's that flow through that I was just talking about. So as you're looking at that, that's what that means, negative revenue. Let's look at pages 16, 17, 18. I'm just going to point out kind of a generality with these, and then we'll talk a little bit about compensation. If you look at all these programs, instructional, special education, co-curricular, so on and so forth, that span those 3 pages, and whenever you look at salaries and benefits, they're pretty significantly higher in the proposed budget than the estimated actuals. And it was referred to in public comment, it's been referred to for a couple of weeks. Yeah, there's a pretty significant compensation package in this budget. So I'm going to get into that a little bit more. The other stuff like purchased services, supplies, property, equipment, it's all pretty comparable. There are some increases based on cost increases in fuel and things that we talked about previously. But really what we hadn't talked about was compensation. And that's the big driver in this part of the expenditures of the general fund budget. Remember, we spend about 3/4 of what we do a year on staff. So what is that? So I'll direct your attention to the screen. This is not detailed in the document itself. When we're talking parent included, this is important. We talk about the word recurring Okay, that salary, once we build somebody's salary, and it happens at that level or higher every year, that's recurring. We typically like to use recurring revenues to do those things. Okay, and we really strive to make that parent includable, means that that's going to count towards mine, anybody, other staff members' highest 3 to 4 years of salary throughout their career. When they retire, they're going to get a percentage of that number, that highest average salary for their pension. So it's important that when possible, we try and address the parent includable salary so that people can think down the road and think about that retirement. When I started as a teacher, could care less. Now it's not. Well, yeah, I should have thought about that. But it's important now to make sure you're on top of it. Hey, what we're adding next year, parent includable salary is 8.5% salary increase for those making salaries, for those hourly wages, 8.5%.
Is that for certified?
That's administrative, certified, classified. And I'll get to the base salary as well. That's big, especially on a budget that doesn't show recurring revenue. On top of that, for exempt staff, those are folks who are exempt from overtime rules. Teachers, administrators, those kind of roles. An additional $1,200 salary. You wonder, well, why the heck would you do that? That's a long conversation. But what that does is that keeps the highest end of the pay scale from getting too much separation from the lowest end of the pay scale. If all you ever do is add percents, right, then those who make more and more, right? That's how it works. But the 1,200 is a nice way to maintain some continuity throughout the pay schedules and address issues, needs, hiring desires, especially in beginning younger staff, the hiring lines, etc. After they just got going. For non-exempt staff, non-exempt means those are folks not exempt from overtime rules. They are going to have an additional 75 cents added onto their hourly rate. Okay, so everybody goes through their own salary and their calculations. They're doing it now. 8.5% plus 75 cents an hour. And then that's what their salary will be moving forward, recurring. Those are some pretty significant. For certified administrative, that's between about 10 and not quite 12% increases. Classified, only about 10.5 to 14% increases. All going into effect July 1st. And our contracts all start at different times. So when the new contract starts with teachers, that's when this will go into effect. So that'd be more like 2 months after the start of the fiscal year. There is a component also of the retention and signing bonuses that have been discussed. I think this is not recurring salary, but this is additional compensation for next year. Right? And that's an additional $1,500 for those that sign stay on, signing bonuses, etc. They're using rural funding, a one-time only source of funding for those signing. Okay? So some folks, hopefully, are standing to see 15, 18, 19% increases in pay next year. Now, you're going to have to remember the following year that $1,500 is probably not there. Okay? But that 8.5% and 1,200, that's added to that increase.
That's good.
Okay, what does that do to the base teacher salary? And here's a big driver. We've talked for a long time and worked for a long time. Addressing retention and recruitment. Okay, and that takes our teaching base salary over $40,000.
Right, why is that number not improving either?
Because I like 8.5%. 8.4.
So this is, so again, recruiting salaries, members of the board is really how we judge a lot of this work. To raise a recruiting salary,
to that 40,000 mark is a very notable thing the district has been trying to do for a lot of years.
Now, it's difficult, and that, I know the question is, well, what is everybody else doing? I couldn't tell you, but they're high, right? And some are low, kind of in that middle. It's an arms race, so we just keep trying to catch up and catch up and catch up. And we get a little bit ahead, and fall behind, and we get ahead. And so, what districts are doing, and this is kind of the how did we get to this? What districts are doing is they realized unexpected revenue gains during the pandemic. We're just like that. Right? So districts like us are using those reserves, those gains coming out of the pandemic. We tightened it up. We said, we're not doing a salary increase from here. We're not spending on capital projects. And this is going to be an emergent situation. Things were better than expected. Now we're turning that money around and forwarding to compensation. Okay? There's a lot of pluses and some minuses to that too. The pluses are it's money right now or over the next year in the pockets of staff. The recurring part of how we sustain that is going to be the challenge. As we look at the hiring wage for classified staff, we're bumping that up by $1 to $14.32, and it feels pretty good. Man, we still got a long ways to go to be competitive. This is an area that is really exploded as far as wages. And if you talk to anybody looking for jobs and done any research, you know that people are making significantly more in those non-exempt roles. Now, we also offer a little over $8,000 in benefits for health, dental, life, etc., that aren't part of it. So that's really more like almost $49,000 for compensation for that $40,000 beginning teacher. That's really pretty good. That's getting. We do have a really significant and strong benefit. Okay, so how are we doing it? I talked about the fund balance coming out of the pandemic. Additionally, pandemic funding has allowed us to use grant funds to offset things that we would have spent typically out of the general fund this year and the previous year. We've got unfilled positions. We weren't able to staff this year too. So we had money allocated to staffing that we haven't been able to spend. It's kind of this strange problem. We're paying more, still can't attract folks. So it's going to be a constant thing, the recruiting and attracting. And so we have some money allocated for staff, as we spend on staff, we're going to turn that to make sure it's spent on staff. And we'll have a smaller workforce next year too. So we have a smaller workforce. We're not spending on as many people, we're spending more. And that's how we got where we're going to do next year. I have a question. All right. Hang in there.
Melissa Barber, do you have anything in this process that you would speak out as council? It sounds like we'll do it in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, we'll wrap up by just talking briefly about the other funds. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but page 19 is risk management. I already talked about what that does. We've got a significant influx of insurance money for the band room claim at the middle school, and so that's why it looks like an inflated carryover, inflated fund balance starting next year. So that money will get spent on ultimately that renovation. Those funds just arrived in the last couple of weeks. If we flip page 20, that's our food service fund. We're happy to announce we're renewing our partnership with Chartwell's Dining Services for 5 one-year contracts coming forward. They've done a tremendous job. If you're unfamiliar with how they help navigate us through the pandemic, providing meals, staffing, feeding kids in the summertime, and they're awesome. They're awesome. And certainly that didn't go unnoticed as we reviewed the bids that came in for Chartwell. So we're excited to have them partnering with us and running our food service program. Next year also, we re-engaged with the National School Lunch Program. We provided free meals for 2 years. And we can't do that anymore for the Department of Agriculture. So I will be back into collecting, bring reduced price applications, charging for meals, reimbursing for meals. It's kind of a different animal, kind of back to normal, so to speak. The grants we've talked about at different times, remember, these are all for different designated purposes. The big ones are those ESSER grants, the federal grants. Again, those have to be spent, one of them by September of 23, that's ESSER 2, and one of them by September of 24, that's ESSER 3. Then that grant balance, it was $5.4 million this year. We're starting out at $4.2 million. We're starting to spend that down. That will start to wane a little bit more as well. But we're always going to have to be aware of and pursuing other grant opportunities. Grants run you through page 24, and then you get into people activities, special revenue fund. That's the cash accounts for fundraising and fees at the schools, kind of like the school lunch program. Fees are coming back. Fees for the beakers in the science class, or whatever it is. We used some one-time money to cover those fees this year. So those are all coming back next year. Now I continue to encourage and push our budget holders and our department heads to use the budgeted money to cover expenditures before we're continuing to assess fees. If we impose a fee for the Pikes Peak field trip, then we got to spend it on the Pikes Peak field trip. That's the law. It's got to go up.
We've also prohibited any increases in fees for next year. Did not feel this was the right time to increase fees in any way across the district. And it's not without a lot of arm wrestling with department heads, staff that quite frankly have not seen an increase in their department budgets to cover costs. We've debated this, Brian, for 3-4 months now. Just do not feel it's the appropriate time to pass costs on to our families. That's not without sacrifice. That's not without staff having to do more with less, or more with the same, I guess. So we will have to address that the following year as kind of a heads up to the board as the economy does or does not do whatever it's going to do. You have inflationary factors that do play into the cost of what we're providing to students. We are not going to raise those rates for next year.
It's important to remember, speaking of inflation, that we feel those effects about 18 months after whatever the inflationary period is. Like right now, we're feeling 7-8%. I don't know what the numbers are, somewhere there. We won't see that turn around in per pupil funding until the 23-24 fiscal year. And the funding formula accounts for this year's inflation. And so we're trying to get ahead and address that now, as a lot of districts are. But we'll see a little bit more funding per pupil, hopefully, for this year's inflation, but if it changes a year and a half later, the per pupil rate will change.
The student lunch programs, will they be affected by the requirements from providing for the student lunch? The legislation?
I'm not sure which legislation you're referring to.
I can chime in. Sue, I think you're referring to the National School Lunch Program that the Department of Agriculture is proposing new regulations that basically attaches conditions to any school that accepts those funds. It's not being done through legislation, but it's being done through a rulemaking practice of the Agriculture Department. And it's been subject to various legal challenges from various states, but I do think it's an appropriate topic that we're going to need to discuss in the board to get some information about when that would, if those policy changes go through, when those would be implemented on school districts and in what fashion. If that were to, because what they're trying to do is they're saying, if you're going to accept money from the National School Lunch Program, you are going to have to adopt transgender specific policies that basically require any staff member to address a student or I guess another staff member by their preferred pronoun. It's going to require that Basically, you have to allow schools and C-sects and locker rooms and bathrooms and on what gender identity they're currently subscribing to. Part of the news report, I don't think anybody has seen a written rule from the Department of Agriculture to really tell us what they're going to be mandated, but they have expressed and made clear that something is coming. It will be a mandate attached to the acceptance of this federal money. And so it's going to be something that I think the board will have to discuss and definitely understand how much money are we talking about, how many students will be affected, but the federal government apparently intends to put conditions on the feeding of low-income children. That if we want to assist them in the cost of feeding them, then we're going to do something else totally unrelated to schools. So, but that's something that's coming.
We will continue to monitor that, and keep the board updated as we hear updates.
None of this is based on any of those. Right, then transportation, we will go back to collecting the transportation bus fee next year. So that's one significant change, even though that only generates about $20,000 in a total spend of about $1 million for transportation. And transportation expenditures come not only from the transportation fund, but also from the general fund. And then on page 27, the final fund, we will have talked about the capital projects fund. This will be designed to implement the facility master plan and start to prioritize millions and millions of dollars for the projects and figure out what we can really afford, how we address those. So starting off with a $2 million balance there, that will carry over. Not all $2 million gets spent in year one, it'll be there, and then a plan of maybe another $7.5 or $1.5 million, or whatever it is each year, depending on the fiscal situation, can be added to that capital project. All right. So with that, you get to two resolutions. The first is the specific budget resolution. Resolutions mean let's take action on them to approve portions of the budget. The specific budget resolution designates fund balance or reserves to be spent in excess of revenue. Fund balance is extremely healthy right now. And so we're budgeting to spend $3.1 million, $3,162,973 of general fund balance on primarily that transfer of $2 million to the capital projects fund. Okay, so $2 million of that goes to the new capital projects fund. About $285,000 of reserves will go to those staffing considerations and bonuses. We talked about using reserves, sometime planning for those. Carrying over Medicaid specific salaries and benefits. Any Medicaid reimbursements have to be spent on Medicaid. We can't just spend them on salaries and benefits for other programs. Medicaid is money intended for the unmet health needs of all states. So it's pretty consistent. There's an additional chunk in there, $340,000 allocated for curriculum review, implementation. And whenever you buy curriculum, they have curriculum. That one's the one on the kind of next on the docket. That's in there. Some technology equipment and other HR systems, legal expenses, election expenses, safety software, and carryover of our rural dollars that have been previously received and not yet spent at $158,000 are budgeted out of reserve. So, board members, as you're looking at the top half of that page above general fund, those are all general fund reserves. Below that, what you see is the fund balance allocation for each of the funds: the risk management fund, food service, people activity, transportation, and capital projects, which will be zero because it's starting. So when it comes time for action, that would be one action item to approve the use of reserves 1 year only, and that won't be deficit spending. Then page is the appropriation resolution. It doesn't want to show it. And that's what I showed you at the beginning. That's the total appropriations in the budget for each fund. So the amount allocated in each fund, that includes all expenditures, all reserves, totaling $42,179,400. And to approve the budget, and all those things I talked about, you have to approve the appropriation resolution. Or questions can I answer?
Mr. Gustafson. I had a couple, sales tax. The portion that is going to Merit Academy, is that, is that based on the funded people count?
Yes.
Okay.
314.
Are you able to tell us how much does the city share the sales tax with us? Like they collect sales tax and then there's a percentage that comes to us?
It's a flat fee, it's about, $200. I think it's like $6,000, $7,000 a year.
We get a lot more sales tax revenue. So what I'm talking about is, what is the percentage that the city deducts from the they collect?
Literally a couple $100 a month. The process, they simply process.
The resolution that was passed, that the voters passed, basically apportions a certain percentage to the school district, right?
So 1.09% comes to the school district.
Okay.
So 7.9% of it is the city. I think our sales tax is 8.9.
That's what
Is that what
You're wondering what they're doing?
Yeah, 1% is we get from.
And that 1.09% is what was voted. So it's that allocation.
I had asked you a little while ago, so I was gonna ask you if you had any more information on this, but I'm told that there is a potential, grant or one-time only funding, for districts with declining enrollment in the first year of authorizing a charter school. Have you had a chance to get any more information about that yet?
Not solid information. I looked into it a little bit, read some about it, heard it doesn't apply to certain demographics of districts, and so we gotta get a little more information.
Okay, so more.
Yeah, so nothing is budgeted on that. But I would encourage Merit and the district to continue to look into that. Are there other grant funding opportunities? Because any grant funding opportunity can certainly offset with either WPSD, Merit, general fund budget, what they spend on operation.
And then the last question I want to ask you about was the raises. That, let's say it's the 8.5% or 10%. How does that compare to raises that have been approved by the district in years past?
So we were frozen for a number of years. So this would be year 7. Not being frozen, but one year, fiscal year 21. They went up. We were frozen that year. So we've had 6 increases in 7 years, totaling 29.5%. So my time here, we've taken our base teacher salary from $30,225 to $40,001. But all of that was over really 6 years. So we've had some pretty significant now, 8.5 is big. I mean, that's in one chunk the biggest one. But coming out of when we were frozen in the Great Recession, we really addressed it, worked hard at it, and bolstered those salaries.
I mean, is this the biggest year-over-year increase that the district has seen in your knowledge?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's good.
Well, I appreciate that. I did want to comment on those raises because I do recall Gary Rovetto raising that in the April meeting. when we first started talking about, the budget cycle was coming up, and I believe Mr. Bevetto threw a number about 7% or 7.5% of the number that he had come up with.
7,000. 7,000.
And so I remember that many of us echoed that. I know I certainly campaigned on, a slogan on one of my signs was empowering parents and supporting teachers. And I believe adding school choice at Parent Academy is part of the first part of that, and we have pay raises for our teachers so that we can retain them, so we can improve them. The other part of that, and so I'm very pleased that with your help, Brian, with working with the WPA, moving through our process, and with the careful work done by other leaders in the administration, like Dr. Neal, that we've been able to put together a process and budget like this that includes what I see is a historic raise, a well-deserved raise. And so I'm sure Mr. Roberto would be pleased by this, and I'm very excited that we're going to have an opportunity here to pass this budget resolution and make these pay increases effective.
I'll just say, many thanks to the Beacon for process, which I was a part of for many years, for working collaboratively on, even those times, I had to sit in those rooms when it was, they were frozen. They were frozen. Oh yeah, it's your floor being frozen. And a lot of folks in here can relate, I can relate. So yeah, those are hard times. And so those that stuck it out, certainly a nice reward for next year. And thanks for that collaboration, working together on it. We did that as we, so I'm excited about that as well.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Gustafson? David, are you able to still hear us?
I think David can hear us, but I'm not sure that he's in a place where he can speak. Okay, David, I think we're gonna go ahead with this resolution.
Okay, well, Mr.
Okay, I just went outside. Okay, are you there?
We can all hear you, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Do I have a motion to, accept the presentation?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call.
May I clarify the motion, to accept, to approve?
Specific budget resolution.
Yes. So do I hear a specific motion to approve specific budget resolution number 1?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you for clarifying.
Roll call, please.
Austin.
Aye.
Eleanor.
Aye.
Patterson. Aye. Russell.
Aye.
And we have the second.
The appropriations.
Yes, so David, next on the agenda is the adoption of the final budget appropriation resolution 2022 to 2023. Are we fine to adopt that by resolution, or do we need to read it out loud before we make such a motion? Okay, I'm being the signal that we do not have to read the entire thing out loud, which is much appreciated. So David, are you fine moving on to the next agenda item? Okay. So, not hearing anything from David, I would ask, do we have a motion to approve the adoption of final budget appropriation resolution 2023? That is on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Austin. Eleanor.
Aye.
Patterson. Aye. Russell.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, our final agenda item this evening is to appoint a member to the Board of Education. I'd just like to say we had a very good group of 8 people, that dropped down to 7, that, came and spent their Saturday morning. We interviewed them. I was very impressed with the people who interviewed. But before I make any more comments, I would like to open this up to the board to discussion and hear from each of the directors their thoughts on moving forward and their thoughts on the interview.
All right, so I have to ask Chris to go first because Chris is the only one who's already done this before. You went through the process, was selected, and then you were part of the process as selected 2 other board members. So would you just honor us with your thoughts?
Yeah, sure, thank you. So the last few times that I've been a part of this process, there's been a lot more real-time discussion. I know that was not on the agenda for this last Saturday morning. Yeah, it was kind of unfortunate in the sense that we did not actually as a board discuss each candidate collectively. We are left to our own impressions, and so I would just say that was something that was different. And I would also say that I agree with Mr. Russell that the candidates who did put their name in the hat allowed themselves to be interviewed. A lot of them are really actually very stellar interviews. And I appreciated the opportunity to hear not only their opinions but their hearts as they were answering questions. That being said, I actually wanted to just clarify for everyone, and maybe Mr. Rushforth, you can help clarify just the process here. There are 4 of us who would vote to appoint, and if there's a tie or if there's no way for us to figure out who to appoint tonight by vote, then that would extend out and we have the opportunity to get to spin this process. Is that correct?
That's correct. And so right now you're just doing opening remarks. The board would need to go into an action to actually move down that road of actually discussing the candidates. If you then had a vote that was a 2-2 split, that would be a non-binding decision that the president then would then be left to appoint. You could come back and actually re-vote at a later date if you wanted clarifying information or clarifying discussion. Kelly, would you mind confirming the last date of the board's potential discussion before the 24th? So without a decision tonight, you would have until the 24th of the month to do another round, another discussion, a retreat, with candidates again, or however you would so choose.
And then that playing into the fact that we have a scheduled session on actually a special board meeting.
Correct.
On June 22nd, we could move this out to where if we found ourselves in a place tonight where we wanted more time. I actually would be curious to hear what some of the other directors are thinking related to timing and pace on this. If you're ready to move tonight, or if we have a conversation we'd like to have. So I'll just defer to you to share with you.
I do have a question for you, Director Austin. When you said you were disappointed with the in a way, how the process went on Saturday, and you said that we didn't have a chance to discuss at board, but we'd like to have some candidates or our opinions. And I have a question about what your experience is
this last appointment. Since we are under the open meeting laws, were those discussions about the pros and cons of each candidate, open during a public meeting?
Yes, they were.
So you felt comfortable discussing what you liked and what you didn't?
Well, probably what we discussed more than anything was what rose to the top as far as that candidate's contribution to the team. And that was something that definitely remained positive. And I would say that, that we did that after every interview, and we gave ourselves a little bit of time between candidates to actually have that conversation. And it may have only been 5, 10, 15 minutes. It was something that we were fresh thinking about it, even who knows. We were able to receive from each other what kind of rose to the surface for each candidate. And so we did that more in real time as the candidates left before we got. So that's how that worked.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but although those were open and public meetings, there was no member of the public in attendance of those, right?
That's correct.
So a little more free space to discuss without feeling that you're gonna say something that you're gonna offend somebody and spread, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the reality is, like, there's certain laws that relate to process and timelines, but it's to the discretion of the board how they were going to, implement the process. And for that particular series of appointees, that's how we implemented the process. I'm not saying it was right or wrong, it was just different. And my only disappointment was that I wasn't able to hear from each other in more real time. We haven't actually had a conversation. So that was the only disappointment I had, was that we weren't able to glean reflections from each other.
Would you say otherwise, though, Chris, that the process so far has been consistent with what was done in the past?
I would say the only other difference was that we had questions that the board had approved to ask each candidate, and that we did not deviate from those. And the board knew what those questions were. In this particular round, in particular, Director Illingworth brought questions in addition to the ones that we were asking each candidate. Now, to your credit, you asked the same questions to every candidate. And you did that in front of all of us. And so that was the only other variation, and yeah, quite frankly, a little bit of a surprise. Didn't see that.
Right, and we discussed on Saturday, though, why I thought that actually was what we were supposed to do. And from a previous conversation when we had in public, and it sounds like you and I both took a sort of different interpretation of, or maybe you remember differently, but I would say we did not, as a board, approve any questions this time. Did you guys, did the board previously in your experience actually have an action item where questions were approved?
No, I wouldn't say it was an action item. It was more of a consensus based on emails that would come to the board, just like the email that came to all of us, although I believe you're saying that you didn't receive that email.
No, I don't think I did, and then I would have been extremely cautious about the idea that that email was for anything other than my notice. If I responded back to it, I would view that involving the directors, it could have become something that would be a violation of the open law. And as we're all aware, the Southern District Court currently has a set of preliminary injunction requirements for quality of the law. So I try to be extremely cautious for something like that. So I guess I would say that whether I received it or not, there was something which I thought I'm going to go ahead and respond to this and get our discussion with the board members.
Yeah, and I understand. And I believe if I recall, it was something that, it was an invitation and a request to receive additional questions for conversation. Perhaps in a public meeting, but I don't believe any of those other questions, except for maybe Director Russell submitted some additional questions that he then retracted. And so, yeah, that's how it went.
I wanted to clarify, and Paul can correct me if I'm wrong, this is an appointment position, it's not an elected position, not all people members are elected, some are appointed, such as this one is.
Members of the board, if you chose to enter into discussion about specific candidates right now, I would recommend a motion to go into that rather than, right now, we're just discussing process, which I think is great. But if you go into discussing candidates, I think we would move forward on the action item for that discussion. That action item may end up not being a vote this evening. But the preamble or the dialogue you're having now is great.
Okay, David, did you have something you wanted to add about that?
Yes, I do. I would be willing to enter into dialogue right now. Our item agenda does say to appoint a member to the board. And I would say that by appointing it, naturally to follow that would be that we would have discussion about the strengths of the candidates that we would be in favor of appointing to taking a vote after discussion. So is a motion for discussion necessary or just a natural part of the appointing process? Is my question.
Well, I
Is it
don't
necessary?
think it could do any harm. So if you'd like to discuss it, I think we'd like to discuss. So since it can't hurt us in any way, I would move that we discuss potentially appointing a member to the Board of Education from the candidates who submitted their names for consideration. Is there a second?
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
David, do you want to lead us off on that discussion?
Sure. It's kind of got some odd phone service right now, but I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. I want to repeat, I was very impressed with the people who came and interviewed with us. I saw the strengths and the strengths in each one of them. And each person brought just a very unique part of them. Everyone had a passion for the school, for the kids. I remember hearing that everyone saying, no, it has to be the children first. The other theme that I heard ringing out was policy and a need to follow through on policy and that taking bold moves. After considering it and going through this quite a bit and going over my notes, there were three candidates to me that rose to the top, and I feel kind of uncomfortable mentioning names, but so I'm going to hold back on names this time, but some of the strengths that people brought were about security for our schools, which is vital today, and experiences with that and moving forward with security. Unfortunately, I don't have all my notes here with me, so I'm reaching back here. One of the things that I was concerned about is that we would appoint someone who would help, who could work together with such a, shall I say, energetic, diverse board, at least very energetic. Who would fit in and work well together with us? There is a sense among some of our community members that there is a fracturing that has certainly happened. And is there somebody that we could bring to the board that would help with that? One of the things that I was considering is, a parent's perspective. I wanted to hear from somebody who has children in the school, who, or who has children who are coming into the school. So I would really value a parent's perspective on all of this. Someone who can also bring to this, maybe more of a middle ground. And those were the things that I was considering very strongly through it. So, I'll pass that on to someone else right now and reserve further comment later. Could everybody hear that?
Yeah, we got you on that.
Okay. So, someone else's turn.
At some point, we will have to name a name.
Yeah.
We can discuss it.
Yeah, let me talk about that.
All right, well, do you want me to, shall I name the three that, or two that stuck out the most to me? Although, I did appreciate, I really thought, I liked Carol Harvey. I liked, Cassie, Kimbrell, and I liked Dawn, what is Dawn's last name?
Zaleski.
I don't have my notes here, so I apologize for that. Those were the three that rose to the top for me. I like the tempered, middle ground, the thoughtful approach that, Cassie Kimbrell had. And I think for me, that she is the candidate that rose to the top.
So, David, I'll jump in because I think Sue and I and Chris are all looking at each other, waiting for somebody to take their minute. And to say nothing of the 70 or 80 people here in the room that are waiting. I gotta say, I don't want to name names specifically. It's really awkward. It feels really rude to me. Not to say that.
Oh, sure.
No, I'm not throwing you under the bus. Matthew, you do that.
At some point, a name has to arise to a discussion, and then a motion will have to be made to discuss just specifically that person.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to criticize you. What I want to say is that I also appreciated everybody who took their time to apply, took their time to come in and ask questions, and I had some very sort of direct questions that I put to each candidate. And I appreciate everybody who took the time to answer those. And I felt like we got a really honest answers from everybody. I really appreciate that everybody came in and, laid it on the line about what they believe in, what they want to accomplish. Some of them made clear that there were things that about the board they wanted to see change. And there were others who came and said that they supported the things that we were doing and wanted to help continue to support us for those sorts of changes. So I can appreciate everybody had very different viewpoints, but they were bold and forthright about those viewpoints. I will say that for consideration for me is that we were replacing Mr. Roberto. He was elected in the election, running as a slate with Sue and David and I. And we all ran on a commitment to certain philosophies and ideals, a commitment to certain policies. And so I think that is key to me, is that I would want Gary's replacement to be somebody who likewise committed to the ideals that I ran to implement. I'm not interested in appointing a member who basically sees their job as stopping and overturning the results of the last election. Who wants to stop the implementation of the reforms that Sue and David and I ran put into place. And some of those things are reversing previous decisions. And that's just the way it is. That's the way elections work. That may be the way the next election works. And maybe decisions that we've made will lead to us not being reelected. And somebody else can come in and make those changes. And that's the beauty of democracy. It's the beauty of people having a voice in the vote.
And, no one can say, that our board meetings are, less important or less noticed, since the election. Whether you agree or disagree, with myself and my fellow elected directors, obviously public interest has been elevated and sustained in the work of the Woodland Park School Board, and that is to everyone's benefit. It's always to the benefit of the community to have people involved in their government, involved in their elections, involved, like in the appointment here, I believe, I believe we had about 8 people apply, and that would probably be the largest number of applications, for any of the vacancies that the school board has seen in the past several years. Y'all didn't have any numbers like that, in your experience, right, Chris? And so, and that goes to what I'm talking about here. We've got people who, whether they, support, the work of the board, whether they want to change the work of the board, they are involved and they are willing to step forward, and all of them deserve to be commended for that. And so there were several candidates, who I liked more than others. I am prepared, when the time is right, to make a motion for the one who, I would be my number one preferred choice. I'll say that, it was very close between, for me, number 1 and number 2. There was another candidate who also was in the top 3, but, the number 1 and there were 2 candidates who stood out by far the most to me. And it was very hard, for myself, to make a decision between them. Of course, when the time is right, I will make a motion for that particular, number 1 candidate. But there were 2 who I would, vote for, readily. And those are the 2 candidates who I thought, best represented, that they believed in the mission, of this board, the same way I see it, and that they are ready to join with us, to work together, to move, conservative reforms and, transparency and oversight forward. I'll turn it over to, Sue or Chris, who would like to go next.
Yes, I think, Dr. Rusterholtz and Illingworth have pretty much said all that I have to say as well. 3 candidates, stand out for me as well. I was happy to see that all the candidates' community was very important to them, and the students, putting the students first. But as Dr. Illingworth stated, we have to make a conscious decision with our conscience to appoint a director that we feel is aligned with our vision, and I plan to do that tonight.
So the big question for me is, who's the best fit for our team? And who would move us towards betterment in our district? And so I am actually, it's interesting, Mr. Rushforth, I actually had those 2 that remain rise to the top for myself. So, no, it's just, it's a unique experience that we're sharing together. And I think the big question for me has to do with who's the best fit for our team and who's going to help us in the betterment of our district. Those are the main focus that I'm using. Actually find that the measure of engagement that we are and have over the last 6 months been pressing into and through. No surprise, I mean, we can call it energetic. We can call it actually ambitious. We can call it all sorts of things. But admittedly, for all of us, it has required something of us. And it's required not only a tremendous amount of time, it's also required a tremendous amount of reflection. And it's been, for many of us, maybe more than It's been quite emotional, actually. And by that, I mean, it's required a lot of our intellectual equity to just really press into big questions and make really important decisions. And so for me, part of the filter then for me is regarding that measure of moving forward, understanding the complexity of the board and what we're pressing into. The one that rises up for me then would be related to who has, from my limited perspective, again, very limited, at a half an hour approach, read the answers to the questions. One of the dynamics in here has to do with capacity. And while it feels unfair to be able to judge someone's capacity based on a limited glimpse into their life, no doubt that every single candidate has a desire to engage. Otherwise, they would not have put their hands. So for me, Carol Harvey seems like she has a lot of experience working with pretty high horsepower groups, making big decisions that impact a lot of people. It seems she has capacity to engage at the level that is required of this group. And so I would say that of the two that rose to the top for me, Cassie Bean and Carol Bean and Mother, I would say that Carol seems like the best at largely
Members of the board, I don't know if it's within your authority to add two positions, but it sounds like two candidates rose to the top. I'm a little bit facetious in my statement.
Well, if we're ready, unless anybody has any other discussion they want to add, I am prepared to make a motion for a vote on candidates. Reminding the one candidate. David, is that okay with you?
Yes, everything was kind of, I pretty much have gotten just everything, and I heard most of what Chris said and everyone else. So yes, if you would like to make a motion, please make a motion.
Okay, so I would move that the Board of Education vote to appoint to Gary Rovetto's vacancy in District D, Cassandra Kimball.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Austin? Millymore?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Russell?
David Russell, I do need your vote on the motion on the floor to approve Cassandra Kimball.
Aye.
Can you say that again, please?
Aye. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Motion carries.
And congratulations, Mr. Wolf.
And congratulations to the other candidates.
Over the next few days, we will find time, as it is appointed. It's not the same as an elected position as far as the process. So we don't actually have to have it notarized. It can be done within our office by Mr. Russell Holt. And so we'll try to find a time over the next couple of days to do that. Should she be available and ready to do that? And would be most likely joining us then, again, depending on her schedule, the night of the 22nd, which is a special meeting that will have an agenda announced next Friday. Very small items on the next agenda on the 22nd, as it's our last meeting of the year.
So are we ready to move on into the superintendent's report?
Unless there's anything else by council or by Ms. Haven, if we indicate we have to do anything different. Okay. I guess I'm first.
Yep.
Mr. Russell, are you still online? Do we still have you?
There's a password on this one.
Hi, we lost you, so we couldn't get on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Are you ready to go back on? Okay, I just have two things real quick. Thank you to the board for the executive session before this. I know we ended quickly and came right into this conversation. Good feedback, great ideas, things with a 5-member board in the next few weeks. We have some really great work to do. And looking forward to getting to know our new board member and kind of congealing and coming together as a team during the month of June and July. Cassie was a great addition. Just real quick, I got a report today on our social media for the year, and it's without wonder, and we talked a little bit about this, that we have improved or increased the numbers of people that are connected to us by over 30% this year. And so those are families that are joining into what all the elementary schools have added, Facebook pages and Instagram pages, and so the staff have made a really strong effort. Yvonne's the principal's in the room, Yvonne is in the room, Katie's in the room. There's another principal that I'm not seeing. But with our public information officer being added, really adding over 33% of our kind of people that watch us and follow us on the fun stuff, right? The good pictures of kids and the great things that are doing. It's a pretty tremendous effort of the village of WPSD to kind of accomplish that. We have on average between 6,000 and 7,000 engagements now every month, and that was up from about 700. So we are not only added folks, but we are, and again, our Facebook page is really just the great stuff that kids are doing. There's not a lot of announcements out there. There's not a lot of information. The goal is to get families to see the good stuff of what's happening. And then in total this year, we had 217,000 images or pictures of great stuff that was happening. So you don't get 217,000 impressions without a whole lot of effort from a whole lot of folks. And so all of Yvonne's team has put in 5, 6, 7 posts a day sometimes. Each posting have 3, 4, 5 pictures. So she's at 30 or 40 or 50 pictures of great stuff happening. And I would contrast that to previous years where maybe that wasn't a focus. And so kudos to our team and the effort. Smiling teachers get tired of the pictures, I'm sure. People get tired of the folks in our classrooms, but it's really great to stand at the end of the year and feel like we have communicated better this year than maybe what we have been able to in the past. So congratulations to staff on that effort. And for those of you that are on their last, I see flip-flops and baseball caps and everybody ready to start summer. Thank you for your dedication to the district and joining us for tonight's meeting.
So we're on the board reports. Do we have any statements by any directors? Anything else to add? I'm seeing no's from Chris and Sue.
Well, I'm actually not a no. I just don't have a board. I just have an expression of gratitude. I've gone through a lot this year as staff, as educators, as administrators. And so I want to thank you. I personally want to thank you for enduring a difficult year and a series of difficult years. And you've done it with class. You've done it with like sincerely. Yeah, there have been heated moments in public conversations and in public comment, but I would say that that's actually part of the real magic that can make this district what it is, and that is people, and sincerely I'm saying this, like, if you feel safe, then we've succeeded. And by safe, I mean free to speak your mind in a culture where you can be heard. And so I want to express gratitude to all of you who shared your hearts, your thoughts, but also not just to this board or to the administration, but to your students. And so I want to just express gratitude. Thank you. Thank you so much.
If I could jump in and say the last word for David. I also echo and appreciate what you say there, Chris. There's no doubt that as far as the school district and this board are concerned, this has been a really big, it's actually like a big half year. The amount of work that has been done. And I think of what Mr. Wright said about giving hope to children. And that's true of everybody. Everybody needs hope. And when I see that we got a charter school approved in the district, when we are able to provide a well-deserved historic raise to our teachers and our counselors and all the people who work so hard to support the mission of the Woodland Park School District. Everybody, and I'm so pleased that raise covers everybody. That's not a raise only for a particular type of job or people make a particular type of money. That's a raise from top to bottom. That's tremendous, and that reflects on and reflects their credit on the work of the people who really went into crafting that budget and making that a priority. And so I have great hope for the future of this school district. This is a wonderful way to close our school year. With everybody able to go and enjoy their vacations, try and recuperate from that, teacher tired phrase I just heard tonight. I think that is fantastic. The only thing I want to add is in relation to talking with all the candidates on Saturday. Two things that were really beneficial coming out of that discussion. With several candidates talked to us about one, I'm going to say this was Ms. Wallen, I hope I'm crediting the right person. Talking about the desire that if we could get more attention, like from the Pikes Peak Courier or something about the work that our students do, like our plays and not just like sporting events, but all the tremendous things, our forensics teams and things like that. That is something that I am happy to agree with Ms. Wallen about. I would love to see more focus on our kids and their growth and development and their accomplishments. And the other thing I would say, the other side of the coin, is that there was a discussion with many candidates, appropriately so, about school safety. It touches a bit on what you were saying. You were using more like a First Amendment context, but I would encourage, now that we have a full board, that the board find time, no better time than this summer, while our students start school, to have a discussion about how we can review and look to improve the safety of our schools, our staff, and our students. I think it would be wonderful to hear from our local law enforcement professionals, any other sort of experts who might have insight to add. And so we had some wonderful discussions with some candidates about that as well. I share the belief that that was being important and perhaps we can do more. If we can do more, we must do more. So, but thank you to everyone who made this school year such a great success for the students of the Woodland Park School District. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and congratulations to you all on completing another great school year. And we look forward to doing it again next year, bigger and better than ever. So thank you for your time, members of the board, and I'll turn it over to President Russell if he has any comments.
I would like to say, Chris and David, we have amazing staff. I've learned so much this year. I've learned that people work even at their absolute best in professionalism when they don't agree with the process that's going forward. You would never know at a public meeting or talking that the level of commitment to doing the best for our kids, for doing the best for our district. I have seen dedication to levels that I'm just thoroughly impressed with. I too am so thankful that we were able to give our teachers a historical raise. And I heard tonight from Dr. Neal that if you take the past 5 years' raises and added those all together, our teachers are getting in excess of that amount. And I'm so happy that that's happened. And hopefully we can keep that trend moving that way in the future. Another thing that I am very happy to be working with Nate Owens and trying to fix this fracture as much as possible. It's a personal goal of mine that we will keep communications open and find peaceful ways forward for all of us. The last thing, I keep saying it because I say it to myself all the time, we need to work towards bringing our community together. It doesn't matter the sizes, whether it's 50-50 or 20-80. Let's set an example here in Woodland Park to all the fractured school districts across the nation. We can find a peaceful way forward. If we choose to not be offended, to understand other people's fears and help them overcome them, standing beside each other, that we choose to forgive quickly, and that we find that peaceful way forward. I am committed to it. I'm willing to stand with everybody, with people who are willing or not willing. But we are better than this. We're on top of the world, one of the highest school districts in the nation. Let's set that example. Let's be that beacon on the hill that we will find a way forward for our community, for our parents, but first and foremost for the kids. And we are all here for the education and the safety of our children. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here tonight. And I'm sorry that I couldn't have been there with you. So I will hand this back over to either David or to Dr. Neal this time.
I think we just need a motion to adjourn.
So good.
Do we have a second? We have a roll call, please.
Austin.
Aye.
Gilmore.
Aye.
Hudson. Aye. Russell.
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 9:12.
I have no idea. It's down, I'm not sure. It's down to go at 8.